So, Neil and Carl, where from here?
Oh.
Well, you know how I feel about having more emphasis on community safety planning, but mostly in terms of simplifying it down.
Yeah.
But it still doesn't deal with that barrier of how to make different communities feel that they need it. So that's the real. I think that there's possibly at the moment there is a elevated awareness amongst Chinese Australians that maybe they need to start having these discussions. But I don't think it's about one community. I think it's the whole community sector and our, as families and communities, what is our place in emergency management planning? And we're not there at the moment.
Yeah, and look, it's Henrietta. It's a $64 million question. I mean, you know, where to from here? I think that, you know, the first step is to reflect on how did we get here, okay, and understand where we are, okay, what intersection we're at, and what are the pathways, you know, available to us. Do we take any of the pathways, or do we create our own, you know, unique pathway or innovative pathway? I think also that perhaps it's time to, you know, redefine or review in how we define a problem, because solutions are developed in the way we define a problem. Okay, and like, you know, as was mentioned, you know, with the Muslim community in the last, you know, decade of, you know, being, you know, at-risk community, where, you know, that was a euphemism for a risk, where the Muslim community was a problem, okay? And if we define a particular community as a problem, then the solutions are going to be around that particular identified problem, where if we were to take a broader human rights lens, a human rights framework, okay, and not make a particular group of people the problem or a problem, okay, and have a collective shared ownership, a responsibility over the problem or whatever multifaceted problems that we have, then that's a good wicket to have in being able to move forward. And I think that whole COVID you know, crisis, and we're not out of it yet. Like, you know, we're still, you know, with the COVID is still, you know, part of our current narrative and agenda. Is that it actually brought people together. It brought communities together, because the problem didn't necessarily rest with one group of persons or group of people. At first, the media did try to, in particular here in Melbourne, try to make it a particular group's problem, okay? But then it realized that, sorry, you know, it actually belongs to everybody, and that unless we all back together, it's gonna impact on everybody. So I think it comes back to the way we see ourselves as part of a bigger society, and that we all own the problem, we all own the solution, and we you know, it's the empathy thing, where just because we come from different ethnicities or religious groups or whatever, however we wish to in a postmodern society identify ourselves, we are not mutually exclusive to any other people. We're all part of humanity, and yeah, we've all got our individual challenges, but you know, we're part of Australian society, and that's you know, we must be prepared to relate to others, not necessarily accept. Okay, like, you know, there's a problem with accepting the other. I mean, this all goes into a lot of intellectual academic exercises, which is, you know, beyond.
Well, it doesn't have to be academic.
It doesn't have to be, but my intention is not to go into let's have this, you know, intellectual. But remember, we're talking about grassroots people. Okay, it's a matter of how do we relate to others. Okay, and so, you know, envisaging a future where, you know, we are relating to others. We are caring about others, and I think that again, it's that signs of a mature society. And unless we actually mature, we'll keep on making the same mistakes. And life teaches you that lessons unless. Until you actually learn from the lessons of your own experiences, you will keep on making the same problems until you learn from it and you move on. Yeah. So, I mean, there's no real right answer, but I think I would say that, at the end of the day, we have to own the problem and we have to own the solution together.
And I think that's what I liked with the ACT is doing a new draft of the multicultural charter. And I think point 2 is about that all of us have obligations to fight racism. And I like that because it's not just, stops with me, but all of us have obligation, regardless of how much we are involved with this group or not. If we hear something, if we see something, do something. We all of us own the problem. We can't just put it this is a problem for XYZ community. This is a problem.
I think that should be
wing or left wing. No, we all own the problem, and until we see this as us, not them, this is where the sort of problem starts.
I would love to see people really identify that value when they talk about a citizenship. That's built in, that idea. But I'd also like to see people outside of our sector get in, we need to have more communication. We don't see, I mean, at the moment, it's all about representation. And I'm concerned that people are simply going to see sticking one of us in Parliament or in here or in that job or on the news or anchoring or, just stick our face somewhere. We all know from the history of multiculturalism that doesn't work and it doesn't deliver to all communities. So I think, we just need to have more involvement in education across so that people understand the stories and they're creating stories that then we can see ourselves. But I think at the moment there's a real need to stimulate and invest in resources to help those communities. I think Victoria has led in terms of funding grants that involve bringing together disparate community groups, whether it's multicultural, religious, or LGBT. They've at times funded grants, built in partnerships so that people have to work together. And I think that's one of the big things that can happen. I think if government really wanted to support it, it's there. If private corporations and philanthropic organizations want to support it, they will build this sort of bringing together of communities that don't necessarily see eye to eye and make them work together on a common goal.
Yeah, Henrietta, can I add one further thing? Again, it really does come back to how we frame a problem. Okay, and if I may give an example about from the Muslim community, and this may be a bit of a radical departure, but the term Islamophobia, for example, okay, it's been worked on, it's been discussed, and it's been promoted. I personally, and again, this is purely for the sake of a conversation purpose. I have concerns about the term Islamophobia. Okay, why are we framing everything with a phobia? Why do we have to fear Islam, or why do we have to fear particular groups of people? Can we not convert a negative into a positive? Okay, so again, this is perhaps a new way of thinking where let's if we change our definitions, if we change the way we frame a problem, perhaps we could achieve better results. And again, this is something coming from the Muslim community. Perhaps we need to review, the way we consider, attacks on Muslims and not call it Islamophobia. Perhaps reframe things where Muslims or Islam has got, things to contribute. You don't need to fear our community. We don't need to live in fear, and that we should look at how we could add value to society, and perhaps that is a conversation worth exploring with regards to the term fear. With regards, yes, it exists. We can't put rose-tinted glasses on and bury our heads in the sand and pretend it doesn't exist. It exists, but in developing a solution, it is dependent upon the way we frame the problem, and that if we were to convert, reframe things, convert negatives into positive, perhaps we could get better outcomes. Just thinking out loud here.
Yeah, I mean that the word, that half of the word phobia is applied to xenophobia, transphobia, homophobia,
Yeah.
a lot of religiophobia.
Yeah.
So it is actually, you're right. The word fear is built into the definition of systemic, and people see it, and people kind of like it. I think also because it's not. It wasn't just me. I could see it's a systemic issue, but at the same time, they also, in our when we're trying to push back against what we feel is very systemic, and indeed is a lot of the time, we're often tainting a lot of people who don't feel that way with the same brush, and not inviting everyone from that community or outside of our community to the table. So it does separate us at the same time. And I understand that's not intentional either. So I really take that point. It's like there are so many unintentional, uncontrolled things that we buy into with these words that don't reflect our acceptance and probably our capacity to accept people different to ourselves. And I think when we actually stop and think about it, we do every day accept people at work, family members, in-laws, we accept a whole bunch of stuff in the right circumstances. And if it matters to us, we can give a little bit, Yeah.
So again, it comes back to, by us accepting certain frameworks, we are feeding into that systemic problem. Yeah. Okay, and perhaps if we shift our focus and apply more positive words, more inspiring words, perhaps we could get different outcomes. I'll give you an example. I'm of Turkish background, and a hospital in Turkish is called, hastane, which means a place for the sick. Okay, right. But in the previous civilization under the Ottomans, they actually called it a place for the cured, shifahane. Okay, so when you're sick and you're going to a center, okay, going to a place of the sick isn't as inspiring as going to a place for the cure. Okay, so it's the same place. It's a place where there are sick people and there are doctors, but just the label makes a difference to the psychology of wanting to be part of somewhere, because you're seeking a solution. You're focusing on the solution, where the word shifa means cure. So you're actually going there with that outcome in mind. I'm going there to be cured, rather than I'm going there as a sick person. And I don't know if I'm going to just continue being sick. I use that as a little quick example, where just by changing certain terms, it affects our attitude, which may in effect change our behavior, which leads to different, better outcomes. That's a little, my 2 bobs worth with regards to where to from here.
I agree. I think sometimes those words they're not just words, they also bring ideas and stories and cultural stories, even mythology, archetypal images. They just bring a whole bunch of cultural options and ways of responding. And I think we don't question that enough. And I think one of the things that we see at the moment with our regional problems, how everyone is using the reference of World War II, which kind of locks you into an unpleasant outcome from the start. They're not using Vietnam, they're using World War II, but but why use any of it? Like, is there another story they can tell, which tells a story about people who misunderstood each other? Through good leadership and through perhaps sometimes even the most powerless people in their community, people to people, they came through and they managed to overcome conflict and become stronger and become one people. I mean, there are a lot of mythological cultural stories in every country that we can refer to that are much better choice than World War II.
Oh, absolutely.
And look at the crisis in Russia and Ukraine. You know, there's World War III straight away, and they've blown it up. Now, do you hear Ukraine at all on the media? No, not at all. So
and
again,
I think we need
media
to
moved on, and because it was just they blown it up, and instead of keeping like nicely burning the story and making sure that things is happening in that region, it just went World War III, and then nothing happened, and everybody forgot because that was the response.
Yeah, so I think the stories that we're talking the stories we tell, and then you're talking about the terms and the language.
Yeah.
And I think that principle applies not just to neighborhoods and communities, but to nations between each other. And then again, their relationship between nations comes back down to the street and the community. So, this idea that we're not connected and not everything's connected is so false. And I think that's why these conversations are really important. So, yeah.
And so how we're talking about crisis, okay?
Yeah.
And a crisis is adversity. So, if I could refer to that famous quote, from adversity comes opportunity. So if we were to focus on the opportunity that could stem from the adversity, i.e. the crisis, perhaps that is a better way to start.
Yeah.
Okay, to be able to reach an outcome which will actually be in our interest. Where if we start off on a negative and frame things always on a negative, focus on the crisis, we will attract more crises, we'll attract more stress. But if we focus on positive language, hopefully that will feed to better solutions.
And I think even like I struggle with the idea of how to introduce humor into what is not a humorous topic, because and no one knows this, but I know Nail would know this, and other people that we worked very closely under very stressful situation, and some of the humor we developed was just priceless. And really at times of complete inappropriateness, we would just have to go into another room surrounded by extremely volatile situation and burst out laughing together as a way of getting out stress. But also our sense of humor got really weird, and it really got us through, got me through, because if I can't laugh, I can't survive it. So I've got to find some way to laugh about it.
Oh yeah, look, if I may say, Henrietta, if you were to ask me, so what got you out of to the next day, for me it was just developing a sense of humor. For me, just Carl knows, I'm a bit of a dad jokes guy, but if I didn't have my own sense of humor and a style of sharing that humor, okay, which is all personalized, I don't think I would have survived as long. Humor is a universal language which we tend to forget. Okay, in all genres, in all subgroups. For example, currently I'm working in the aged care sector, and I suggested that why don't we have a comedy festival with the aged, okay, sharing their cultural humor about it's good to be a senior, or it's good to age. Like aging is not necessarily a bad thing, and we could actually enjoy it. And what we do is, as different cultures come on a stage and share humor from our own cultures, and enjoy each other's sense of humor. Why take life too seriously, which is not going to have a good impact on our well-being? Humor is a priceless asset, which unfortunately falls on our blind sides.
It does, and people are quite afraid to talk about things these days. So, yeah. But let's be hopeful. I'm always hopeful. It makes it sound like I'm not, but I actually am. I'm always hopeful.
Well, it's good to know that, we have people like you guys in the community that we can turn to. As I said in the beginning, for me, the February thing, the whole February was, it was very stressful, and obviously people trust me, so they came to me of what to do, and they were bombarded by the media. They wanted the sad stories of the Ukrainian children from the media, and they didn't know what to do. And there was so many stressful situations. So talking to Carl and like, no, this happened before, this is what you need to do, and just passing that on message to the communities was, I felt like I could do something. And it's just one of those things. And humor is definitely part of my work as well. People said that, oh, you work in aged care. I was like, yeah, I work in aged care, and it's a lot of fun. We just have too much fun. Like, I have parties with the seniors every week. I absolutely love working in aged care, the best thing ever. But humor is definitely, especially in the times when I see things repeating itself, and oh my God, I told you this before, at least 1.5 million times. You need a little bit of humor, and humor is definitely what's connecting us at work. So
yeah, it comes back to connections. It comes back to how we engage with one another. Okay, so moving forward, if we want to prevent crises, it's the way we engage with one another. And prevention is better than cure. The saying, a stitch in time saves 9. Okay, so being able to build strong bonds with one another well in advance will bode better for us. And how do we build bonds? By the way we engage. Okay, let's give an example in how we engage with one another. Humor is one way where we could engage with one another. Let's enjoy each other's company. Let's enjoy each other's cultures outside of the traditional stereotype ways that we are accustomed to. It's not all about food, it's not all about, the stereotypical things where, our civilizations are far more richer, okay, than that stereotypical, oh, this is your food, this is my food. Oh, wonderful. Well, can we move on from food? Yeah.
Please, and let's move on from the
gastronomical romanticism, but we have, not my term. I got it from a good friend, Sally, but she's correct in that we have gastronomical romanticism at times, which is okay if we use it, between us and ethnics, and let's share our food and whatnot. But a lot of the times I've seen things focusing way too much on food, and like, can we move on? Like, we have art. Have you ever actually think increasing the translation of international books, because we have less than 3% translated into English? Like, how about, focus on that a little bit different? And people like, oh, I didn't know it's only 2%. I was like, yeah, we have 2% of books yearly published, only translated to English only. And that's on the scale of how much we produce as a humanity in regards to language and culture. That's it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, but I will finish up by saying I believe change needs to be led by the community. I will make that call, because I believe the government has got so much on its plate, and we're, it just hasn't proven in the past, and it's crying out for help. But we can't help government, but we can help ourselves, and in helping ourselves, we'll be better prepared to work with government.
Yes.
So I believe we cannot wait. Stop waiting for government. Stop waiting for government agencies to come and help you. Create the innovation now. Cooperate now in whatever way you can. And I think that's how do we move forward. I think it's community led in whatever way we can, and stop waiting for people to save us.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, it's been great. Thank you.
Yay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for both of you.